we have discussed what are the various appendices that is available for the smoothing, that is available for the various data that is used in the data content that is used in the various content. All right. In the last class, we have discussed about the observation. What is the observation, how it is taken out, and what are the various methods by which we can observe, and what is the observation, what is it, how many respondents are taken out this one, and what are the various time issue, cost issues. So let's start with this one. So what is an observation? What is it? So whatever the data collection that is based on watching a process or skill and systematically recording the events, whatever the event that is recorded out. So observation may be done in the person at the time of the event or using the media. So whatever tool that we are using, so observation can be made that is at the time of the event or using the media. Example, analysis of a video tape recording. Whatever the analysis, whatever the tool, whatever the content that is taken out, so that will be used with the event that is used with the video tape recording. And how many respondent or how many participants are available in this one. So it typically ranges from 5 to 20 people. So the number of people or the object event observed that depends on the subject being observed. So whatever the observations, whatever the subject that will taken out, so that will be used for the observation, that will be used with the subject derived, that include the short, that include the discrete activities such as the use of the recycle container versus the complete length activity such as the ability to facilitate the listen. Whatever the observation, whatever the tool that is required to process the data, that is required to watch a tool or the skill that is systematically record the event. And that observation may be done in the person or that may be done in the process at the time of the event or using the media. Then next is what are the various times issues. It varies depending on what is being observed. So whatever the data that is observed, that depends on the content, that depends on the time. For example, if I'm observing one of the data, one of the content that is not required, that is not relevant for the data, so that is not required for this one. So the counting the number of cans recycled during a single event, that is community festival, requires a little time commitment, and observing group interaction over the life of a project requires the more complex data collection. So it depends on the size to the size, it depends on the project to the project, it depends on the observation to the observation. What are the observation, whatever the commitment that we have, that is used with the group interaction, that is used with the life of a project, that is used with the complex data collection and a longer time commitment. This is a time issue. Then what is the cost issue? So it also varies with the complexity of the project. If the project or the subject is more complex, so more cost is acquired. If this is not more complex, so less cost is acquired. So this varies with the complexity of the project or the subject. So observation, whatever the data that is collected, that systematically record the event, that is the observation. Then how many respondents, how many participants are available, that typically ranges from 5 to 20. Then what are the various time issues, that depends on the experience, that depends on the observation that we observe. Then what is the cost, that also done, or that also varies with the complexity of the project. Then when to use it. So when to use it means what is the time when to use observations. So observation allows evaluators to document behavior, whatever the document that is behave. So this is required, evaluators to document behavior. When evaluator wants to know how people behave, that is the documentation of the skills, recycling, fishing, or the result of a specific behavior. So that is the result of a specific behavior or data content that is used with the diversity of the plants or the animal in the restoration area. So that observation also evaluates or also allows the evaluators to document behavior. And in that cases, whenever we have to evaluate something, whenever we are going to do something or observe specific behavior, then observation should be used. And the actual behavior, that is a result of the behavior, is documented, not what people say, but they do or are planning on doing. So whatever the people do, whatever the people planning, whatever the behavior, whatever the documentation that is used, that is a planning on doing. So it is used with the planned observation, it is used with the evaluators to plan out or to document the behavior, and that evaluation wants to know how many people behaves, that is the demonstration of the skills, recycling or the fishing. The next is what are some of the benefits of the observation, or how we observe, or what are the various pros and the cons of the observation. Then First is little interruption. Little interruption means there is no interruption of the workflow or the group activity if done properly. If it is done properly, there is no interruption of the workflow or the group activity. Then next one is it generates the data about the actual behavior, not the reported behavior. So it generates the data about the actual behavior in the sense we focus on the main observation, we focus on the live object, that is the actual behavior, not the reported behavior. Then it can also see in a project in the action, whatever the target, whatever the deadline that is we have. So we can also see the project in the action. Project in the sense action means what is the project, what is the status of the project, whether it is showing the good status, it is showing the bad status, what is the status of the project. Then can also provide the good in-depth data, whatever the in-depth data that is acquired. So that also provide benefits of the observation of the tool that is required with the good in-depth data. Then data collected is in context. So whatever the data that is collected, that is available in the context, that is available with the guidelines, whatever the guidelines that we have, so that is available with the context. In the same way, we need an astute observer that also recognize the interaction problems, whatever the interaction problem that is not easily described by the participant, whatever the participant data, whatever the interaction problem that is used, so that the astute observer can recognize the interaction problem not easily detected by the participant. Because as a normal participant, we are not able to recognize the interaction. But when I observe anyone, when I observe any person, that is more rectified data, more useful data that is available by that is used by the participant. Now, it's the responsibility of the observer that may follow any action that may be at a different points of time in the system. So observer can follow the actions at different time in the points in the system. Their administrative cost can be kept to a minimum. Why? Because there is no cost for the admin cost, so that cost must be kept to a minimum. There is low cost that is available for the administrative cost. Now, what are some of the limitations, or what are the various limitations that is required? So first one is requires the process and the content knowledge by the observer. So this requires the process and the content knowledge. What is the process knowledge? What is the content knowledge that is used by the observer? Then observer can also disrupt or alter the system. Sometimes if I'm watching someone or I'm judging someone and I'm focusing on a person, so that sometimes I'm not saying every time, sometimes this can also disrupt or alter the system. Then observer can be considered as spy. Spy means a hidden obstacle that is available within the project, that is available within the working environment. Then data can be skewed by the observer biasness. So it depends on the observer biasness. If the observer is biased among various persons, among the various individual in the group, that also be skewed by the observer biasness if one of the person is biased among this. Then data are not always quantifiable. So that is not always quantifiable. You cannot quantify, we cannot judge the various contents of the data. That is not always quantifiable and also requires a judgment by the observer. So not each and every time the data is quantifiable, and not each and every time judgment will be observed by the observer. The next is typically small sample size. Yeah, observers are used typically with a small sample size. Then usually time intensive, that is used with this one. Then does not indicate how many participants view their actions. What are the various participants that is view their action, whatever the tool that is acquired by the action. Now let's see what are the various rubrics that is used for scoring the performance. Rubrics in the sense what are the various achievement that we achieved, that is rubrics for scoring the performance. A rubric is the set of the criteria and the standard that is linked to the learning objectives and used to assess the performance. So that is what are the various criteria and the standard that is linked to various objectives that is used for the learning objectives, and the standards criteria that is used for the learning objectives used to assess their performance. When we consider how well a project participant performed the task, we place the performance on a continuum from the exceptional to not up to the exceptions or expectations. That means what are the various exceptions and what are the various expectations that is not marked with the expectations what we are going to use, what we are going to study. And in addition to using the rubrics and observing a performance, rubrics also provides a template for scoring the portfolio. That means what is the portfolio? How we can judge what are the various open-ended questions, what are the various group terms, so the independent research project that is used with the reports. And with the well-written rubric, it is reasonable to expect that the performances or all the performances will be measured with the same yardstick. Same yardstick means the same panel will be used with the same criteria. Additionally, when rubrics are used in educational context and provided to the learner prior to completing the task, prior to completing the assignment, learner know what is expected of them and they are likely to perform better. So learner will know what you are expected and how you are likely to perform in a better way. And the rubrics are comprised of three components, that is the criteria, descriptors, and a level of performance. That means there are three components, components that is used for this one, that is the criteria, descriptors, and the level of performance. And for each criteria, the evaluator assign different level of performance. Assign different level of performance in the sense, whatever the criteria, whatever the term that is used, so that will assign different levels of the performance. That depends on the evaluator to evaluator. And the descriptors spell out what is expected of learners at each level of performance for each criteria. That is, what is the criteria, how it is gathered, and how we are assigned the new criteria. That is a descriptor. That is what we are going to tell what performance is required at each level and how the work will be differentiated from the work of the others for each criteria. That means what is the uniqueness in this one? What is the uniqueness for this consent criteria? And similarly, the descriptors help the instructor more precisely and consistently evaluate the learner's work. Whatever the learner's work, whatever the data that is required for this, that is required for the instructor, that is more precisely and consistently evaluate the learner's work. Now, let's see what is the rubric that is performed or that is make performance for the scoring the performance. These are the various levels. These are the criteria. These are the descriptors. That means whatever the level. That means, for example, if in your assignment, what is the rubric? That is LO1, learning outcome 1, learning outcome 2, 3, 4. What is the criteria? There are multiple LOs or there are multiple 1.1, 1.2 that is available in your assignment. And descriptor in the sense, how would you describe for this one? That is a descriptor. So one is a level, one is a levels, one is a criteria, one is a descriptors. Then next is a sample rubric, that is taking the water samples or taking the water supply. The score, this is the safety, degree to which the learners follow the correct safety precaution. That is, what is the score for this one? What is the safety? That is the design or the degree to which the learner follows the correct safety procedures. Then procedure, degree to which the learner follows the proper mechanics. So one is safety, that is a proper procedure is followed. Then procedure, proper mechanics is followed. Result, that means what is the output, what is what we obtain, the proper sample values, what is the proper sample value that is obtained, that is known as the result. The interpretation in the sense or interpretation in the sense, degree to which the learners develop the likely hypothesis. What are the hypotheses? Whatever the content that is used, or what is the content that is used with the interpolation or interpretation? That is a score. Then it fully meets the standards. It does not fully meet the or partially meet the standard. So first is fully meets the standard. That also handles the chemicals and the glassware safety. Then obtains the contaminated samples and follows the correct step for the pH analysis. Then both samples within 0.3 points of the correct pH. Then can list 3 plausible reasons why the pH of the two samples differ and defend reasoning behind the hypothesis. Whatever the hypothesis that is required, how it will get that requirements, how it will fully meets the or fully meets the requirement of the data. So one is a fully meets the requirement or fully meets the standards that is required for the chemicals and the glassware safety. And one is the uncontaminated samples and follow the correct step for the pH analysis that is required with the sample, that is required with the 0.3 points of the correct pH. And in the partially, there is no serious safety issues during the analysis, but the procedure deviate from the ideal. Deviate in the sense can be used or can be gone with the deviate from the ideal. Then had some problems following the instruction, but the procedure is adequate for the approximate correct test result. But of the correct test result that is available, that partially meets the requirement, that partially get the requirement. Then one sample within 0.3 points of the correct pH. We can list 2 possible or the plausible reasons why the pH is not adequate or why the two sample pHs differ, and can also behind the reasoning behind the hypothesis. The next is major departures from some respect of the standards. What are the concern, what are the shows, more concern or the knowledge about the safety issues. What are the safety issues? That may be the careless in handling the material, that may be careless in knowing the knowledge, whatever the data that is required. Then have a major problem with the procedure that will likely yield incorrect result. whatever the incorrect result that is acquired, that is also used for the major departure, that is used for the aspect of the standards. Then neither sample within the 0.3 points, but at least one sample within the 0.5% that is available that can list one possible solution why the pH of the two samples different and also different reasoning behind the hypothesis. That is what is the main criteria for this one, why we are using the standard criteria. So this is partially meet the major departure that does not meet the standard. That does not meet the standard in the sense, whatever the standard that is required, we cannot meet the standard to disregard safety concern when handling the material. Whatever the material that is to be handled out, whatever the time constraint that is required. So disregard safety concern. So disregard means there is no regard of the safety concern that when handling the material, when handles the data. Then does not follow the necessary steps in the analysis and cannot obtain the useful result. So it does not follow the necessary steps, whatever the necessary step that is required, and cannot obtain the useful result, whatever the useful result that does not meet the standard, that does not meet the requirements of the data. The next is neither sample within 0.5 point. So it is not sample within the 0.5 point. That is not required for this. Then cannot list even one possible solution why the two samples differ. So why the two samples are differ, they does not use with the sample, they does not use with the standard, that is whatever the standard that is required that does not meet the standards. Now this is the rubrics for this. This is the rubrics that is taking the water sample. We are taking the water sample for the safety, for the procedures, for the results, for the interpretation. So we are taking the rubrics, we are taking the interpretation, that is the rubric. Now next is the literature review. So we are done with the observation and the rubric that is available for the taking the water sample. The next is the literature review. What is it? So existing information in the form of the reports, historical data, planning and budget reports, that is organization charts, workshop, evaluation, career development reports. So whatever the report, that may be a historical report, that may be a planning, that may be a budget, that may be a report, that may be organization structure data, that may be a workshop evaluation, that may be a career development report. So whatever the report, whatever the content that is required, that is a literature review. That may be in the form of the reports, historical data, planning and the budget report. And this also includes the published research and the other evaluation reports. Published research in the sense whatever the report that is published out and whatever the evaluation criteria that is a report that is taken for the literature review. Now, how many respondents of the participants are used with or are available with the literature review? That is not applicable. Why? Well, this is a literature review. There is no participant. There is no everything we are using with the statistical data. There is no report. There is no historical data that is required. Now, next is the time issues. What are the various time issues? So it depends. It varies on the number of document. Whatever the number of document, their availability and the amount of information being analyzed. What is the amount of information that being analyzed? What is the number of document? What is the availability and what is the information that is being analyzed? So that depends on the number of document, their availability, and the amount of information that being analyzed. Then, what are the cost issues? So this is relatively inexpensive using the existing documents and the data. Whatever the document, whatever the existing document that is prepared, so that is used with the existing documents and the data, that is relatively inexpensive as using the existing information, documents and the data. The next is when to use it. That is when to use the issues, when to use it. The literature reviews are used primarily in every stage of the development of an evaluation. Whatever the stage that we are talking about, it is used in the development of each and every stage and particularly useful in the front-end evaluation. Front-end evaluation in the sense whatever the literature review that is used with the front-end. And the existing literature, that is example, the theory, research findings, previous evaluation reports, and the data can provide a baseline. Whatever the data, whatever the theory, whatever the criteria that is used with the baseline that is used with the existing data. and that can also help paint a picture of the intended audience, their perceptions or perceptions, and their reactions. What are the perceptions? Whatever the reactions, whatever the time issues, whatever the cost issues, that is used with the relatively inexpensive using the existing documents and the data. Now, when to use it? So it depends on the evaluation that is particularly used in the front end evaluation. Front end in the sense, front end means evaluation criteria that is useful in the front end. Then what are some of the benefits? That means what are the various benefits that is used with this one, that is used with the literature view. So can be less time consuming. So it can be less time consuming. Then makes use of already gathered statistical data. Whatever the data that is acquired, that is used of the already gathered statistical data. Then easier to chart changes over the time. So easier to make the chart changes, it is very easy to make the changes over the chart over the time. Then provides excellent evidence of the problem. So it also provides excellent evidence of the problem. Whatever the excellent evidence in the sense, perfectly evidence, that is a need assessment, that is a excellent evidence of the problem. Then minimum effort on the interpretation or interruption of the worker. It can be a minimum effort that is used with the benefit, that is used with the minimum effort, that is used with the interruption of the workers. Interruption of the worker in the sense, whatever the workers criteria that is required for the data gathering. So it can be very less time consuming, makes use of the already gathered statistical data. It is very easier to chart the changes over the time, then also provides excellent evidence of the problem, then minimum effort of the interpretation of the workers. Limitation is that data synthesis can be very difficult. We cannot synthesize the data, we cannot expect the data. It is very difficult to synthesize the data, then may not address a specific question. So it is not addressing the specific questions, specific question that is required, that is gathered by the interpretations. These are also the limitations. Then they may not enter the specific question, that is done, that depends on the causes of the problem. They may not have been collected, that may not have been collected with the recorded data, with the recorded information, and the reports may be incomplete. So it is also one of the limitations that in some cases, whenever we are using the literature review, in some cases, I'm not all saying always, it is in some cases reports may be incomplete in this, and the organization can be hesitate to share if the results affect poorly in the organization, because organization think that if their status is not good, if their results are not good, so they are poorly, that also provide the poorly impact on the organization or the projects, and the reports may have been adjusted or selectively edited. So these are the various limitations of the this concerned department or this concerned data that is required for this one. Then that next one is a test that I'm going to start within the next class. So till now, any doubts anywhere? Today I'm going, yeah, today we have discussed about the literature review, whatever the observation, rubrics on the taking the sample, and these are the various benefits, or these are the various tools that is used for the data collection, and these are the various, we can say, the crucial tool that is available for the data collections. So any typical doubts over here, any limitation doubts? Yeah, that reports may be incomplete in some cases because this is one of the limitations of the data gathering requirements. And it can be a less time consuming. It is very less time consuming for the statistical data, for the already gathered statistical information, and is also easier to chart the changes over the time, whatever the changes that is available with the link chart. Then also provides the excellent evidence of the problem. Excellent in the sense that the need assessment of the excellent evidence of the problems. Then minimum effort or the interruption of the worker. So whatever the minimum effort, whatever the interruption of the worker that is required, so that is used with the minimum effort on the interruption of the workers. That depends on the scenario, that depends on the benefits. All right. So till now, any doubts, anyone? All right. So next topic, that is the tomorrow's topic, is the test. How we can using as a data collection instrument as a test. All right. So thanks a lot, everyone. We will meet tomorrow with a new topic, that is a test. I'm repeating again,